A gentleman by the name of Stuart Rhodes is a terrorist, it turns out. And how do you handle terrorists in America? Well, we've had a couple of wise men explain to us how it's done. When you come across a terrorist, you
Rags. Sklounced.
exactly. That is what has happened in a court of law. Let's have a look at that. Stuart Rhodes is now, I don't know what his nickname is now sentenced. Stuart Rhodes, the founder and leader, this is by Dylan Stableford, a senior writer for Yahoo News. Stuart Rhodes, the founder and leader of the Oathkeepers, was sentenced Thursday to 18 years in federal prison for seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Sorry, no year was necessary to give out there. Prosecution had sought 25 years. Still, it was the longest sentence handed down to a Republican to date for any of the more than 500 people convicted in the January 6 cases. Remember, the Justice Department is real hesitant to treat conservatives fairly. They need to use kid gloves because these are essentially evil children. Earlier this month, oh wait, I'm not supposed to be insulting. I take it back. Not conservatives in general, just Republicans. Earlier this month, Peter Schwartz of Kentucky was sentenced to 14 years for attacking police officers with pepper spray and a chair, Jesus Christ, as he stormed the Capitol. Rhodes was convicted in November following a 2-month trial, not that long, that showcased the far-right extremist group's violent plot to overturn President Biden's election and keep then-President Donald Trump in power. Rhodes' lawyers said he will appeal. Here's everything we know about the landmark case and the Justice Department's ongoing efforts to prosecute those who were involved in the deadly insurrection. What is seditious conspiracy again? This is the only section I want to read you because this is important. The seditious conspiracy law was enacted after the Civil War to deter Southerners from conspiring against the U.S. government. Of course, the law applies to everybody, but it was designed because Southerners were a bunch of goddamn traitors. If you want to restore your reputation, Southerners, don't act like a bunch of goddamn traitors. The crime occurs when 2 or more people conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force those in power. Sedition has rarely been charged in the United States. Let me just back that up. The crime occurs when 2 or more people conspire, greedy little evil see you next Tuesdays, conspire together to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force those in power. And they do so, by the way, in this case, to make sure that we are not fairly represented. They disagreed with who won the election, and so they tried to take away the American people's right to choose. Isn't it funny how that's always happening with those folks? Whether it be conservatives in 1776 trying to make sure that we bow down to a king in the United States, someone who was simply born into power, or whether it was in 1864 when Southerners were trying to make sure that we had to bow down to slave masters, simply because somebody was born into that position of power. They were wealthy and white, and so they got to tell other Americans what to do, literally whip them if those Americans didn't do as they were told. Again, it's just simply, this is not an insult. This is a statement of conservative tendencies. It is to bow down to somebody who is not elected. And again, in 2021, trying to make sure that Americans had to bow down to someone that wasn't elected, someone who was simply born rich and said cruel things. And so a minority of the country wanted them in power and wanted the majority of us to not have our will done. Sedition has rarely been charged in the United States. According to the Associated Press, the last time U.S. prosecutors brought a seditious conspiracy case prior to the Rhodes case was in 2010, when 9 members of the Oatherkeepers militia in Michigan, were charged with inciting an uprising against the government. They were acquitted on the sedition conspiracy charges at a 2012 trial. They really should not have been, by the way. That is a massive, that's a shame on my state that no one currently in power is going to be able to live down. Plain and simple. Rhodes and 10 of his co-conspirators were the first Jan 6 defendants charged with sedition. Has anyone else been convicted of it? Yes, Kelly Meggs, leader of the Oatherkeepers Florida chapter, and one of Rhodes's co-defendants, was also found guilty of seditious conspiracy and sentenced Thursday to 12 years in prison. It's either a lisp or a slur with me. You're just going to have to choose, because I got jowly cheeks, and that's what happens. Real quick, talking about Michigan. And we don't need to stick here. Let's go back to the big screen. So real quick, talking about Michigan. I often say that Michigan is not better or worse than other states. It is simply on a different pattern. It's slightly ahead in terms of the chain of events. But yeah, Michigan had a massive... It first had a massive representation problem, and during that time, we developed a massive militia problem, a terrorist problem. No different than you'd imagine in Afghanistan. Literally, dudes running off and living in the hills, except that Monday to Friday, they would then come back and pretend like they were decent members of society instead of the filth that they were. So, and by the way, that is, it's fine to call terrorists filth in all scenarios. So, yeah, Michigan is a great microcosm for the rest of the country. If you want to know what the rest of the country is likely to do, well, in Michigan, we got sick of our terrorist problem. We had a couple of close calls, and then we finally dealt with it. Unfortunately, we didn't truly, really, and honestly deal with it until we had, I don't know if you'd call it our version of January 6th. Or if whatever happened, if the Wolverine Watchman case was the baby version of a much worse thing that's to come. But we had our rock bottom, which is a group of terrorists called the Wolverine Watchmen, tried to kidnap our governor and blow up a bridge, and war tactics. And they were going to try her in their own personal court in their basement somewhere, by which, and they had stated that the end result of that was almost certainly going to be execution. So the heroic Dana Nessel, Attorney General of Michigan, contacted the news agencies one day and said, "Get ready for tomorrow." Didn't give us anything more than that. Just said, "Get ready for tomorrow. Have your A-team there, because it's going to be a busy day for you." It was a courtesy. And when that happened, it turns out tomorrow was the arrest of the Wolverine Watchman and the breaking of that story. Why tie that in? Because look at what is happening now. In Michigan, those arrests and eventual convictions were a prelude to the how do I put this? The waking up of the state, the just being done with GOP nonsense of the state. It led to the current situation we have now, where Democrats control everything, and the state is being run very, very well. Are they progressives? No. No, they are. We have Whitmer is I would say she's a centrist Democrat. She's not a conservative. Jocelyn Benson leans a little more, believe it or not, conservative. Still a Democrat, but that's our Secretary of State. She's a little more of a resistant to change type person. And then Dana Nessel, she's a little more left, despite the fact that she's a cop. She's a prosecutor, essentially, as the Attorney General. That's just how it shakes out. How does this relate to Rhodes? Hopefully America is over the hard part. That's what I'm hoping. Hopefully January 6th was the Wolverine Watchman's attempt. Yada yada yada. But boy, 18 years. Folks, I don't know. Rhodes in court. Let me look at what this Twitter fella said. Rhodes in court said that. Let me pull all this up here. He showed no remorse. His defense said it was. Let's see. Who got the Million MAGA? This is what his defense said. Who got the Million MAGA rally started? Who got the Stop the Steal rally started? Who got J6 started? It wasn't Mr. Rhodes, says his defense. Had Mr. Rhodes not showed up in D.C., J6 would have still happened. I agreed so far. If you want to put a face on J6, says Mr. Rhodes' defense, this is from Scott McFarlane and a Twitter thread. That link is in the descriptions. Right-wing media he blames, yada, yada, yada. And then Rhodes stand up. And Rhodes stands up in his own defense, is talking about why he should be sentenced lightly. And he says, we protect people outside of Trump rallies against Antifa. Then he accuses Antifa of targeting unarmed victims. For the record, every accusation is a confession. Truly, right-wingers do interrupt peaceful protests and try to start violence. Antifa does not do that. Antifa is not an organization. It's a belief system that all Americans should have. It is being anti-fascist. Everybody around the world, I just assume they're decent people, and therefore I assume upon meeting them, first and foremost, that they are Antifa. I give you all, watching now, the credit of assuming you're Antifa. Mr. Rhodes was not remorseful. Mr. Rhodes blamed people that stand against fascism for his violent behavior. He did not renounce his behavior. And he got 18 years out of a possible 25. I guess my question would be, what is worse than Mr. Rhodes' behavior? What is more seditious than literally trying to overthrow an election? I would have gone the full 25. In other words, you want to interrupt his sentence early and give him and give him parole. You do that after he's demonstrated that prison has had an effect on the man. That prison has had an effect on him. I don't think our current prison system works very well for reforming people, frankly, but the way it is supposed to work, and if we're not going to change it, then we need to operate as though it's working correctly, folks. The way it's supposed to work is that if this guy has been reformed partway through his sentence, a board can review it and choose to end the sentence early. Say, okay, he's learned his lesson. Let him go. Right now, the guy hasn't reformed. And so the judge, you have to ask, what are they communicating? When they have a possible 25-year sentence they can hand out for sedition, for betraying the country, and they say, I'm not going to hand out the max sentence for this. They're saying this wasn't as bad a case as could be. So my question would be, what's worse about it? Because I'll tell you, what they're communicating, what I hear, is that it's not like this was a lefty trying to overthrow a right-leaning government. He's still not allowed to do that technically. Technically, he's still not allowed to overthrow the government. But it's not. It's a good right-leaning, good old boy trying to overthrow a Democrat. So you got to take that into consideration. That's the impression I get, and that's unacceptable. So overall, is it good news? Yes, 18 years is at least a serious sentence. Don't forget, this is a country that is happy to give out 6 months of probation to punks like this. It literally wouldn't have surprised me if that would have been, it would have infuriated me, but not surprised me if that would have been what the judge did. But it's still an unacceptable message that has been communicated. Now, I'm sure when I read the judge's, and truth be told here, I have not read the judge's full opinion yet. I'm sure when I do, they're going to say something along the lines of, Mr. Rhodes did not shoot at anybody on January 6th. Mr. Rhodes did not take any hostages, yada, 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 yada. But to me, having seen one too many cases where you have to give the benefit of the doubt for a conservative, and one too many cases where it's a left-leaning person who's on trial and you're not allowed to give the benefit of the doubt. I just don't buy it. And I don't think it's an acceptable sentence. But this is Friday Peace Talks, so I want to hear what y'all have to say. I'm gonna kick out of this. Let's look at the comments.